All right, welcome back to Fabrication 101. It's great to have you guys back in the shop with me today. We're going to be working on the Bronco again. Like I said before, I picked up, like I said, I think I need a sway bar in the back of this thing. So I had a sway bar. I actually bought it when I redid the whole rear suspension. This is a Curry anti-rock sway bar, RockJock, all that stuff. Putting it in the back of the Bronco. You can see I got the back kind of torn apart already. And I've got kind of two options that I'm looking at here. And then let me grab this arm. Trying to figure out which ones are going to be working best. One is going to possibly have the arm back here, coming forward. The other one is coming this way. There are issues with both. I think, I don't know. I think I'm going to move the rear shocks forward to this hole first. Because I think that's going to give me a better idea how things are going to work. I'm going to make a couple of other adjustments too. I don't know if you can see that, but it looks to me like my pinion angle is a little bit low. So I'm going to roll the axle up this way a little bit more. Just because I do think that my U-joint there is binding on occasion. So we take care of that. We're going to move the shocks to the back, and then we're going to look at where we're going to mount this sway bar. So less talking, more working. Let's go. All right, so here we are getting set up. We're going to get this rear end somewhat torn apart. Not super torn apart, but enough to do what I need to get done here. So I'm going to start by pulling these lower shock bolts out. They're just 1/2-inch bolts, about 2.5, maybe 3 inches long, I forget. I got to tap them out a little bit. Using a tapered punch for this kind of stuff usually makes things a lot easier. I think what I was running into here is I just didn't have enough downward travel on my shock, so it was pushing down on the bolt, and you can actually see it drop in there. So in a second here, I think I decide I'm going to go ahead and lift the back end of the Bronco back up a few more inches so I can let the rear axle drop down some more. Because at that point, it was already sitting down completely. Now you can see there's another 3 inches of space underneath there, so that rear end. And it was actually bound up on the misalignment spacers in there. They were tweaked a little bit, and you can see that rear end just dropped out. So I got the other one pulled out, and now I'm going to readjust my lower link length. Started by taking that jam nut loose, which I think is kind of redundant because these arms have a fixed end on the other end, so you can't really spin them when they're in there. So the jam nut, I don't know, is 100% necessary, but I think it is a strength thing as well. One of the challenges with these is on a 4-link style like this, especially this setup, you can't just lift the link up or down. You have to move the axle forward or backwards to get the bolt out, and that can make it a bit of a challenge at times. And you can see here I'm just kind of looking at eyeballing things, and I figured some stuff out. Eventually, I decided to just go ahead and push on the rear axle backwards or drag it back on the floor jack a little bit, and it made things kind of do what I needed it to do. So you can see here I'm getting ready to drop it back in so I can bolt it back up. It does take a little bit more time than in the video here, just because I had to take the time to measure both sides and make sure that everything is where it should be, so that I'm not having a crooked rear axle, I guess I should say. Part of it also is you can adjust your pinion up and down, which is what I was doing with the floor jack there. So it makes the axle, the bottom, rotate in and out. You can see how it slides in now. Pretty nice and easy. So I'm bringing the jack over, lift up the pinion, so it kind of pushes and keeps the link from falling out now also. So it makes it a little bit easier to get put back together. These 3/4 inch fine thread bolts, I don't normally like hitting them through like that because it's a really good way to mess up your threads, but if you can give them a few taps and they start moving, then it's usually going to be okay. As long as you're not driving it through trying to find the hole, that's when you usually mess up your bolts. So Cleaned out those bowls a little bit with the drill there. Now my rear shock on this side is pretty much ready to go right back in and line up the way I was hoping it would. So we'll get this side done, and then I think I'm going to go ahead and lift or reset the ride height so I can figure out how close I am to my ride height. So I didn't change my rear rates at all at this point. I just moved the rear location backwards, which actually is going to reduce the weight that the shocks will carry by a little bit. It sets the rear end down just a little bit further. But it didn't really make that big of a difference, but I got to get it down so I can start looking at how I'm going to set up my new rear sway bar. All right, well, we got the shock location moved to the back in the bottom, and I also moved the lower link, shortened it about 1/2 inch, which I like the pinion angle a lot more. But my phone is ringing. It's probably a spam call. Let's go see. But I'm a little concerned about how close that slip joint is now, so I may end up having to get my drive shaft a little shorter. But that's kind of not the issue right now. So I think what I'm going to end up doing is mounting my sway bar somewhere in this area here, having to put a little bit of a bend in the arms so that they clear and can come back here. Trying to mount back here was going to be a whole lot more work. Plus it was going to put the arms a lot further past the axle. I'm trying to land them right on the axle or really close to. The other thing is that sway bar is going to put a lot of pressure on the chassis when it's torquing things, and I feel a lot better about the strength of the chassis, the tube work here, than I do back here. I'm not super concerned because this is where the rear leaf springs were mounted, that it's going to twist, but I also used to have a whole chunk of frame in there as well. So it kind of was a ladder type frame before, but now it's just the tube work supporting the back of the rig. So I think, like I said, I think I'm going to feel a little bit better here. I think it's actually going to be easier to do it there. But like I said, I'm going to have to put a little bit of a bend in the arms, which I'm not concerned about. I've done it before. A lot of people do it. They make bent arms, and it's really not a lot of bend. I kind of drew it out here on the table. This is the width of the arm, or the sway bar itself, and this is how far out I need it to come. So it's really only like 1 3/4 inches that it needs to come out, so not a lot of bend. It's just a quick little zigzag, and it should work pretty good. So I'm going to try to figure out a way I can mock these two arms up in my, not mock, but set them up in my brake, because I want to try to bend them as close to here as I can, or somewhere in this area, so that I'm not, I have as much straight arm as I can get. Plus that's going to allow me to mount it somewhere within the range of where I need to be, close to the shock as well. So anyway, we're going to try to get these set up and get them bent so we can move forward with getting the sway bar mounted. And here we are setting things up in my Swag off-road press brake that's in the press I built myself a few videos back, a while back actually. And the more I use this press brake from Swag, the more impressed I am with it. You can see in the bottom I've actually added a couple pieces of angle iron in there, and that is to kind of tighten up the bend radius so it can do a little bit tighter bends, and it makes this thing work really well. I haven't had much use to take any of the fingers out yet, but I'm sure that day is coming. So you can see it's bending these about 3/8 of an inch thick, and it's bending them no problem. Just using an angle gauge there to try to get them reasonably close before I eyeball them. And you can see that I'm using a tape measure there, and that's an easy way to try to duplicate the bends from piece to piece. Now I did have to take that 3/8 spacer out to to do the other bend on these pieces, so I couldn't use that measurement to get it exactly the same on both sides. But I think they came out pretty good. I did end up having to tweak them a little bit later on, add a little bit more bend to them, but I'm pretty happy with the way they came out and the way that this little bender works for doing these jobs. All right, we got both arms bent pretty well. It came out pretty good. I'm pretty pleased with the way those bent up, and they look pretty symmetrical. They did they had a little bit of a curve to them anyway, so hopefully that's not going to matter too much. So I'm looking at how I'm going to mount them up in here, and I think I'm going to end up having to pull my exhaust out again because the sway bar is going to go somewhere in this area. I just don't know how high up I need to go with it. Obviously, I can only go up so high because the fuel tank's just above this, so I can't go too much higher than that. So I'm going to have to pull the exhaust again, and probably going to have to come up with a final solution for the exhaust where I want it to come out and all that stuff, because this is where it is now. It's just kind of temporary after I did all the rear suspension. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my coils out so that I can cycle the suspension, make sure everything's going to work. I'm a little concerned with how much droop I have. That may cause the sway bar link to go over center, I guess I would say, is where when it droops out, we're going to end up with the end link and the bar almost in a line, and they could bind. And so I'm going to have to watch that. I think I can get away with angling the arm just a little bit more at ride height. It's supposed to be level at ride height, but I'm gonna have to do what I got to do with a rock crawler. So anyway, we'll pick that up tomorrow because it's getting warm out here. Well, it's been warm all day, but I'm pretty much at the end of my day, so we'll pick this up tomorrow. All right, welcome back. We're back in the shop next day. Actually been a little bit more than a day. I had a massive rainstorm yesterday, so I spent some time checking things out, making sure the new shop wasn't leaking, and everything looks really good. Got a little bit of water under one of the doors, but other than that, I don't see anything, no major insulation hanging down or anything like that, so I'm pretty happy with it. Anyway, I got the Bronco back, or got the Bronco back. Bronco's been back, but got the, let's see, I got the coils out, I got the exhaust out, and I have the drive shaft out. Unfortunately, it looks like I'm going to have my drive shaft shortened a little bit. I kind of, when I redid this rear suspension, I kind of had a little bit of an angle I wasn't happy with, and it kind of chewed up the inside of the yokes, destroyed the seals on the U-joint. So I'm going to try to get that fixed. So I think it just needs to be shortened a little bit. So I'll have that shortened up here soon, hopefully. But anyway, got this set up to where I want it. I think we're going to be looking at mounting the sway bar right about here. That should be pretty in line. I don't need to worry about, I'm not going to try to notch this tube. It'd been nice if I could have planned ahead enough, but oh well. There's enough room for me to hang it right underneath there, and it's still going to clear the links and everything and be just fine. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to mount it right there. Got a couple other measurements to double check, and then we'll get to mounting that sway bar. All right, so we're going to start laying out this bracket. I really like these silver streak pencils. These ones are pretty cool because they're like a mechanical pencil that you can adjust, but you can also, the end cap on a lot of them comes off and you can sharpen the silver streak ends. I really like these pencils for marking on this kind of stuff, especially since and it doesn't really matter in this case, but the heat doesn't affect the marking. So it looks a little weird right now, but what I'm doing is actually laying out two brackets at the same time. So I'm going to cut them and drill them kind of together so that my holes are lined up exactly where I want them to be. Just double checking with a piece of scrap 1 3/4 tube. Really don't need to center punch both sides, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the two pieces off and then I tack them together. Using my good old bandsaw here. This thing's a million years old, but it cuts nice and straight. I think the belt's getting a little wore out in it, but it still worked pretty well. So, like I said, I'm going to go ahead and tack these two together, and that just holds them so that the holes go in the exact same place. I do this a lot, especially if I'm going to have to grind the brackets and line them all up, make them look nice. So here we go, drilling out the first. This is just a 1/4 inch pilot hole. And then, like I said, these are going to get drilled out to 1 3/4 inches with a hole saw. And just like my drill, my little drill press here, or just like my bandsaw, my little drill press, the belt's getting a little wore out in it, because you can see I kind of have to keep stopping and restarting my cuts. But it still makes pretty short work of making those holes. Using the trusty old portable bandsaw here. Still, one of these days I'll probably put it in a table just like most normal people do, but for right now this works really well for what I need it to do. Making my two end cuts, and you can see this is where I actually cut off of those tack welds, so they're not there, not in the way anymore. The two pieces will come apart. So fit everything together. Now I'm getting it all tacked up into place. Double checking my front to back measurement before I tack things in. It fits pretty dang good, but there is a tiny little bit of a hair of a gap up towards the top. But everything looks like it should work out pretty good. So I'm gonna go tack the other side real quick. The other side's a little trickier because there is a wiring harness and an air hose over there that I got to make sure I don't melt the hole through. So make sure they're tacked, eyeball them, make sure everything looks nice and straight. And again, make sure everything looks pretty much the way I want it to be. Alright, sway bar is mocked into place. Some simple tabs and some tack welds. It's a little loose, but it'll tighten up when everything's tightened up. I'm a little wondering if this isn't quite enough room in here, because as the suspension cycles, obviously this system moves back and forth a little bit, but as this side comes up, this shock will actually come out just a little bit. I'm pretty sure I'm good now, but I might go ahead and bend these just a little bit more, tweak them out just a little bit, just to make sure I have that much more clearance. But other than that, I'm pretty happy with the results. I think I'm probably going to go ahead and bend those real quick, and then I'm going to figure out my sway bar end length. I don't think I'm going to be able to have these level at ride height, just because this thing has a whole lot more droop than compression. It's not set out in the center. So I think I'm going to have them slightly angled up a little bit, and hope that there's enough room that they don't crash up here, which I don't think they will. But everything looks pretty okay so far. It's just going to have to be kind of what it is. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and turn the fan back on, because it's about 1,000,000 degrees with about 1,000% humidity right here in Arizona right now, which I know shouldn't be complaining. A lot of people have it a lot worse, but as soon as I turn that fan off, it gets very stuffy and muggy in here. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get that done. We'll get probably go ahead and bend the links a little bit more, like I said, and then we'll figure out our end links. Alright, well, I spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out the best setup for, at least for what I'm trying to do here. This bracket came with the sway bar kit. You can see I'm marking it out. Initially started marking it out the wrong way, so got a little notch there for where it fits around the truss. Get it tacked in there. Make sure it's all nice and straight, and straight-ish anyway. And get it tacked so that make sure everything fits. One good idea when you're welding around your brake rotors, take the time to cover them up so you don't get spatter on them. I did end up having to shorten both the rod ends and the rod to make it fit, because I had a little bit of a tight space. When you're cutting any kind of threaded rod, if you can do yourself a favor and put the nut on there first, that way when you back that nut off, it'll kind of straighten your threads out for you. But this seemed to work pretty well. Everything came out pretty good. You can see right here that it just slipped right in there, right where it needs to be. We're going to go ahead and tighten things up just so we can double check all of our fitments and everything, and see how it works. Once everything's tightened up, I'm going to go ahead and cycle the suspension up and down a little bit, just to double check, make sure there's no problems, like a sway bar end falling off like it does right here. If it doesn't, I go to drop it down, I guess. All the way up, start coming down, you can see that pop off. It's just sitting on there for now, but it does get bolted on later. But all the clearances look good, everything else looks good, and we're going to keep moving on. All right, as you can see, got it done. Actually got both sides done. Went ahead and did the other side. Pretty pleased with the way this has come out. You can see that the link, actually at right height, was sitting pretty flat. Everything seems to function. Everything clears. I'm still hopeful that those look clear on the springs. I did end up bending those out just a little bit more. But everything looks pretty dang good. So next step is going to be to pull everything apart, pull it all apart and get it all welded out, which is going to be fun because I have to shut the fan off. Probably going to put my jacket on because I'll be welding underneath and all that stuff. So should be nice and toasty warm by the time I'm all done with that stuff. So. Welcome back. It's a new day in the shop. The sway bar mount is all welded up and not quite ready to be painted. Hopefully I didn't melt anything there. Airline, electrical stuff added on wire, but anyway, ooh, that one looked like it might have got a little bit of cooked, a little bit of toasty. Maybe, but that's all done, all welded up, ready to be painted. But before I paint it, I want to go ahead and add some bump stops to the back of this thing because with the shocks angled backwards, I have about maybe 3/4 of an inch or so of shock shaft, and the upper mounts on the axle are hitting the frame are really close. So I've got these big Daystar bushings that I'm going to go ahead and mount right about here. I have some air bumps. I don't know if I want to use those. I think I'm going to go ahead and use these instead. This will be a much simpler mount. I don't think I really need the air bumps back here. Just, I don't know. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and knock up a bracket. A couple quick brackets on either side. Mount this thing here. I do want to come down a little bit with it. So that if it hits it, we're not running into any risk of it bottoming out and hitting the frame over there. Plus, the brake line on the other link is very close to being pinched between the sway bar mount now. So I want to be real careful about that and make sure we got plenty of clearance. But anyway, this should go pretty quickly. So we'll get this knocked out and then we'll be right back. All right, well, we got those tacked in, but there's a bit of a problem. Let's take a look here. So, I tacked it in, jacked it up, and it's smushing it a little bit. You can kind of see a little bit of a curve there, but I don't think it's touching enough. I don't think there's enough compression here. I think this actually needs to be almost like an inch lower to give myself where I'm comfortable with the clearance I've got. The problem is I can't just put like a spacer here because the bolt is not long enough. So I think I'm gonna have to re-engineer this mount, figure out a way to move the bump stop under. It'd be nice to have it right underneath this tube here because that's where all the strength is. Just got to figure out how to mount it with the tube. So while I sit here and stare at this and scratch my head for a little bit, I will figure out what it's going to take to put that back where I need it. So we'll be back as soon as I come up with another plan. And we're back. Let me show you what I've come up with here. Well, I've already implemented it. I think it's going to work pretty well. So what I've got here is a piece of 2 by 3 inch 3/16 angle iron, and it kind of moves the bump stop in and down, which I think gives me the height I need. It is sitting on the bump stop right now, and it gives me a little over an inch above those links, which I think is good, because as this compresses, I don't think it'll go too much further. So I've got a brace on the inside that keeps it from twisting. All it's left is to go ahead and get both sides all welded out. So we're going to go ahead and knock that out real quick and move on from there. Good morning. We're back in the shop. It's a new day. It's actually the 4th of July, so happy 4th of July. I hope you guys have a fun, safe holiday. Enjoy some cool fireworks if you're in an area that's not always under fire danger during this time of the year. Anyway, got the back of the Broncos all welded up. I did throw some paint on things, so it's ready for final assembly. Before I do that, I got to unload a new piece of shop equipment that I'm kind of excited about. It's not the newest, latest, greatest, but it is a CNC plasma table. This is a plasma cam unit. I've got a ton of experience with these machines, 15 years or so, I'm pretty excited. Got a really good deal. The guy said it wasn't working, but after looking at it for just a few minutes, I've got a pretty good idea, or I'm 90% sure. I think I know what the problem is, and it's a very simple thing to fix. So we're going to get this stuff unloaded. Before I do that, I want to show you something else. Okay, I don't know how to feel on this, because I'm kind of irritated by it. I'm kind of embarrassed by it, and I'm kind of surprised. So anyway, I was in the middle of, actually on the 3/4 of the way on the way home from going to picking this up, and it's about a 4-hour drive there, 4-hour drive back. And I stopped at a gas station. I'm checking straps, checking things out on the trailer. One of the things I do a lot is I check how hot the wheel hubs are getting. I check, touch lug nuts, touch the hubs, feel how warm things are, make sure one's not getting super hot, because it's a way to kind of tell if you've got a bearing going bad or a brake dragging on that axle or something like that. And everything was going good until I walked around to the passenger side and I noticed this. Let's see, how many of you guys, I'll give you a second, see if you guys can tell what's wrong here. You guys notice these lug nuts? And it's on both tires on this side. These lug nuts are backwards. If you didn't know this, the tapered part of that lug nut goes into the wheel. And they're cranked on there, so I'm going to get those switched. I'm kind of irritated because when I had those tires put on, it was just the last time those were changed, it was done at a tire shop. And now I know they don't always hire people that have a lot of experience, but they should at least make sure they know what they're doing. Something as a teacher I've learned is you cannot assume what people know, because if you do that, it's just going to lead you to trouble. I'm a little irritated with myself because those tires were put on there over 2 years ago. So those lug nuts have been like that for more than 2 years, which is also why I'm kind of surprised that they haven't come loose yet. I don't know how many miles they're on these, or have been on this since I put it on there, but there's one trip to Lake Havasu. That's at 8 hours round trip. 2 trips to Sand Hollow State Park, which I think is another 8 hours or so round trip, maybe even a little bit more. I have no idea how many trips to down in Phoenix and back. Lots of trips to Prescott to go pick up material from the steel suppliers. I don't know, lots of trips. Local ones, I've probably close more than 5,000 miles, I would say, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a trailer. They don't get put on the road a ton, at least a couple times a year for me. So anyway, enough talking about it, but if you didn't know that, flip those around. I'm going to flip them around real quick. Hopefully I can get them off, because they had to drive those on there pretty tight for them to stay without the taper on the inside. So we're going to get this unloaded. We'll talk more about it in another video, a future video, and then we're going to get back to putting the back of the Bronco back together. All right, back of the Bronco's all mostly reassembled, no tires, obviously. Everything looks pretty good. It's sitting a little high in the back still. I'm hoping I didn't make a huge mistake in doing all this stuff. it occurred to me at some point, I don't remember exactly when, that the upper coils that I had on here, these are new ones, I felt were a little soft. And in fact, I had the rear suspension sitting at its height by using the slider stop nuts. I don't know what they're called, for the dual rate coil. They were pretty much sitting on the bottom springs to get my ride height where I wanted it, because the upper coils were so soft. So anyway, I upgraded. I went to a stiffer upper coil slightly, not a whole lot more. So it's sitting a little higher. It is a 0 preload right now, so there's no preload on the coil springs. And it's sitting a little, I think it's a little high, but there's no weight in the back right now. So the reason I'm a little concerned that I may have messed this up is it occurs to me that that soft upper coil probably had a lot to do with my excessive body roll that I was experiencing. So I'm hoping I didn't kind of jump the gun and do too many things at once here. Usually it's a good idea to change one thing at a time instead of doing multiple things. And so here I've changed my upper coil, moved the lower mount back, which actually reduces the rate of the spring a little bit percentage-wise, and I added a sway bar. The rear shocks are still charged with nitrogen, which I don't remember what pressure I had in them, so I'm probably going to let them out and then recharge them and see where that puts things. But for now, I think we're done. At least for this video, we're done. We'll be back in another video. I got to redo some work on the rear sheet metal. Obviously, got to cut out those holes a little bit bigger. And I think I'm going to go ahead and remove those old upper shock mounts off the chassis. So anyway, with that said, I appreciate you guys tuning in to this episode of Fabrication 101. Make sure you check back again. If you like this episode, make sure you like it. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. Share it with a friend. And we will see you on the next episode of Fabrication 101. In the meantime, do yourself a favor, do me a favor, and go build something.